And those kids did not even, like, I lived on
Well,
149th.
you didn't have the internet. You didn't have social media. You
No,
didn't have a lot of things that kids have access
you have
access to.
the internet.
You cannot
No,
compare
but
an
listen,
80s child to a
I'm talking
2000.
about when I was stupid. I was a grown adult, and they had internet back then.
And we can make that same argument to the talented tenth of the African American community. So to compare apples to oranges is disingenuous. You understand what I'm saying to you, Cat?
Oh, I didn't know if I was allowed to talk.
No, yeah, I haven't interrupted you one
Oh
time.
yeah. I hear your take on it, and I'm a very observant of your opinion and perspective, and I respect that, and I acknowledge your opinion and perspective.
Everybody working from the same working definition of the difference between what an excuse is versus what a reason is. An excuse provides justification or defends a fault, right? Whereas a reason is just really explaining the causation or the why to a situation. So when we're having these discussions, I think a lot of people are mistaken an excuse for a reason. When somebody's given a historical context to say this is what happened in the past previously that has led to some of these outcomes, that's not an excuse. That's a reason. So you can follow the tracks to say, okay, this is why this is probably the outcome. But now that we see the outcome, if we're stuck in that position of never moving forward to overcome, like we have all of these studies, we see why all of these things are happening, but we're still stuck on trying to do the explanation. I think that's when it starts becoming the excuse to say, well, we can't move forward. And I don't think that, at least I didn't hear, I don't think that that's what people are, well, Ali, myself, are saying. Even Marcus, some of the points that he made up, I think they was given the rationale, the whys. But now I do think we do need to move forward with, okay, we know that this has happened. So what's our next step to go ahead and change it?
Right. And would that be because I think that the most, if we're going to the educational route, I think that our biggest issue is we can bring it to them and they just refuse to do it. So what would that fall under? Because that's what really big issue is.
I also think it has a lot to do with exposure. Most people, especially people who are in lower socioeconomic positions, it is a lack of access and exposure. So if the only thing I see in my area, and I'm speaking this from facts, when I lived in Harlem, chaotic, I literally lived right across the street from the school that I taught in. And those kids did not even, like, I lived on 149th.
Well, you didn't have the internet. You didn't have social media. You didn't have a lot of things that kids have access to.
The internet.
You cannot compare an 80s child to a 2000.
I'm talking about when I was stupid. I was a grown adult, and they had internet back then.
What I'm saying to you is, growing up, the kids aren't growing up. It's a different.
No, this is what I'm saying.
Will probably be more. She's younger.
But listen to what I'm saying. Let me get to the point. What I'm saying is those kids did not have the same exposure in terms of, they did not leave their block. I lived on 149th. Some kids never been to 125th Street. You know what I'm saying? So when you are growing up in a limited environment, you have parents that are very limited. Like, I would see them sitting on the, like, I taught, and I'm like, oh, why wasn't such and such in class on time today? But I saw him last night on sitting on the stoop with you. These are conversations that I'm having with parents as I'm walking home. I lived in the community that I worked in. And I think that's part of the problem, is that a lot of times we are speaking from a place of privilege. We don't realize it. We're speaking from a place of privilege when you see kids that are growing up in a situation that is a situation of lack, and then we blame them for not learning.
But what I'm saying to you, I get the kid. Okay, let's take the kids who are really in poverty. We do not live in an area that's in poverty. We do not. And we're still having some of the same issues. So what are their excuses?
I don't think they have excuses. I can't argue that fact. I'm talking about the kids that I know what my purpose is to serve. Those are the kids that I gravitate towards, those who are at risk, because I've been in situations where I've seen that. I grew up in an environment like that, so I know the impact of that. So that's what I do, and I think that's what's lacking as a community. Once we make it, we don't turn around to pull their hand up to help other people do better.
Absolutely, but again, we just took those kids. We're not talking about your kids. We're talking about the other kids, the vast, not those kids, the ones who have a legit reason. We're talking about the other ones, which is a great many who have opportunity. They're not living in the projects. They don't live in the ghetto. They just don't want to do it.
No, chaotic. I just give them extra attention. My kids were successful all around. That's all I want to state. My EOCT scores were the bomb for the group of kids that I worked with.
I don't
But
think
they got a little extra because they needed it.
I don't think our culture even allows us to even do that, where our parents as a whole aren't pushing for education. They're just like Chaotic was saying, like they're focused on getting the new Nikes, the new Jordans, all of these things.
Because they had them shoes on, baby. That
Oh
line, that
God.
Jordan line, they gonna bust with them shoes.
It was
That's why I said it wasn't an excuse.
growing up, it was horrible. Me with my little Walmart shoes got bullied, whereas people who made probably less than my mom did had the best shoes in town versus their grades were horrible. You know, to kind of go off of what Miss Taken was saying, I grew up in an inner city in New York City, and there were lots of opportunities afforded. Lots of different programs came to my school, lots of different things. And I was the only one that actually took advantage of those opportunities. That started my traveling career. I was able to travel with the UN, with a youth group, to travel to Germany, Japan, Malaysia, all these different countries. But I was the only one who took the opportunity in the entire school. The same opportunity was afforded to everyone in this predominantly Black school, and no one else took advantage. I think there are a lot of inner city schools that have programs and things like the UN coming to their school, or Red Cross, or People to People, or other things like that. This is normal in the inner city, but I don't think parents or the students take advantage of it.
Go ahead,
I hear you, Marcus.
I say, so to try and address some of the stuff you were saying, chaotic. It was so much. You asked me a question in regards to the fraternal organizations, right? So I'm sure you're aware of the
I
talented.
really
right?
don't want to talk about.
No, I'm not talking about the fraternity. I'm talking. He asked me a question in regards to why weren't these people having the same issues as other people. So I want to bring it up to the point of the talented 10th, right? You familiar with that W.E.B. Du Bois theory? That there's 10% of the population, no matter what happens, that will be successful and will be able to survive and thrive past anything. When you have that talented 10th and you disconnect them from people, what tends to happen is what happens with redlining, right? You have all the resources or the benefits of that person being attached to the group being removed, and they cross onto the other side. Once they disconnect, those people who are impoverished don't have a lifeline, a bloodline, or any other resources that come into that tax base. It's a reason people send their kids to private school. It's because education isn't all equal, right? And there's a barrier to entry. And when you create a society that the divide further increases, you're going to have these problems extremely exacerbated. You talked about why people who come over to America are able to achieve such high things, right? I would argue that might be part of that talented 10th position, because they're not the large representative of the people from that nation or that country. They're a small demographic who come over here and become that successful. And we can make that same argument to the talented 10th of the African American community. So to compare apples to oranges is disingenuous. You understand what I'm saying to you, Cat?
Oh, I didn't know if I was allowed to talk.
No, I haven't interrupted you one time.
Yeah. I hear your take on it, and I'm a very observant of your opinion and perspective, and I respect that, and I acknowledge your opinion and perspective.